There's not a lot for me to introduce. I will agree exactly with what Steve has said. And being a Christian myself, an elder at Bethel Church, I have listened to him for the last, well, however long he's been since he replaced Pat White. And also before that when he was on the weekends. But I know Spirit bears witness with Spirit. And I know the man loves the Lord, my Lord, your Lord, the one and only true God, the Lord Jesus Christ. And so it's with that I had every confidence in having him come speak to us. And he is a man that's very knowledgeable about the Constitution and to try to give us some direction in getting our country going back in the right direction. So you just come speak to us, Pat.
Some of you stood up. You've obviously never listened to the radio. So am I okay to bring one of these over here? Just say yes. Sure. Okay. Everybody all right? There's a good question. Am I all right? It depends on your definition of all right. You have to understand, I have chronic kidney disease. And after the last appointment with my doctor, here's the new rule at my house. If it tastes good, I can't have it. And if I'm chewing cardboard, I can put all the pepper on it I want. So you tell me, am I all right? No, I don't think so. And somebody said, well, you just came from the show. You did 3 hours there. You rushed down here. You're going to be able to do anything? I have no idea. It depends on what Mrs. Miller wrote for me. But I am very thankful for the opportunity to be here. I have a lot of clients down this way, so I'm actually down this way a lot. On top of doing the radio station, I also have, on the north side of Fort Wayne, I also have an insurance and a financial planning agency, so I do a lot of that. So don't let that bother you. I didn't bring any applications in here with me or anything, so just, they're in the Taurus. So as soon as we're done, if you'd all just get in a single file and just come by the Taurus and just, don't worry, just sign, if you'll just sign it, and then we'll tell you what's in it. A lot of you hear me talk about the lovely Mrs. Miller. This coming May, we will have been together for 37 years. And I took her out for a very nice dinner last night. Because of the way our schedule worked, we've had 2 funerals in the last 3 weeks in our family, so things have been a little hectic. So we got back from southern Indiana. Have any of you ever been to Shoals, Indiana? Yeah, you guys back me up, you can't get there from here. Right? What you do is you go to Indianapolis, then you go down to Martinsville, then you go down to Bloomington, then you go down to Bedford, then you turn on 50, and then you just pray. So that's just, so we were in Shoals, but we came back, and so life has been a little hectic. So we went out to dinner last night for Valentine's. Last night was our big Valentine's. I took her out to one of the nice restaurants in town. And so we're sitting there, and I was just staring at her. Do you ever do that? Every once in a while you just stare at her, and you're like, holy cow, she's beautiful. And I was just sitting there staring at her, and she looked at me, she said, what? I said, can you believe almost 37 years together? And she said, Pat, I'm trying to eat. Now, you think I'm joking. I'm not. Now, we have 2 children. And now, is that 7:15? Is that the time, or does that mean I have 7 hours and 15 minutes to go? Because I'm used to 3-hour shows, okay? So, all right. We have 2 daughters. The reason that we have 2 is because we don't want 3. And trust me, if the second one would have come first, we'd only have 1. I firmly believe in the providence of God. I also believe he has an enormous sense of humor. When Shannon was born, our oldest, who works in the office, by the way, at downtown Fort Wayne with Congressman Stutzman, which I don't normally say on the air. She gets enough hate phone calls as it is. She doesn't need my people calling her. But when Shannon was born, she had some heart difficulties at the start and turning blue, and we had to go through a bunch of procedures. But, you know, we watched over her like crazy and just took care of her. But she was a great kid. She started sleeping all night long when she was 3 weeks of age. When she got a little older, you know, and you transfer from this kind of food to this kind of food, they said it's going to be rough. Went right through that. We had, how many of you, this is your church here, okay? Yeah. Do you have the kind of encouragement at your church that we have at our church, to where when we were talking about Shannon, how perfect she was, and the sweet lady would come by and go, just wait till the terrible twos. I kept waiting. I thought she was going to say, and your little dog too. But when we hit the terrible twos, this was the terrible twos with my daughter Shannon. I'm not kidding. Shannon, it's time for bed. She'd get up, turn the TV off, go kiss her mom, go climb in bed and wait for me. I'd go in there, I'd tell her a bedtime story, I'd kneel down next to her bed, I'd pray with her, I'd cover her up, I'd kiss her, I'd say, good night, honey, I'd shut the door. You wouldn't see her until 9 in the morning. That was the terrible twos. I was going to write this book on how to raise godly children, and then God gave us Courtney. The only thing I wrote after that were letters to Dr. Dobson. You know, if you've got the time, if you could help me. You know, and I firmly believe there are some conversations I want to have with the Lord when I do finally get to heaven and I see him face to face. One of them is about Courtney, because I just know that I thought I had everything all figured out with Shannon. I just know the day Courtney was born, I picture God nudging St. Peter saying, watch this. And so it's been nutty ever since then. In fact, one of the things that was the most difficult for me was about 4 years ago, we had to put our dog down, he was a dark male golden retriever, which was the world's greatest dog, Bailey the Mighty Wonder Dog. And we finally had to have him put down after 14 years, and it about killed me. Have you ever gone through that? And I was still talking to a guy the other day, and we were talking about our dogs, and I was talking about Bailey, and I started to tear up. And he says, does it still really get to you that much? I said, you have to understand something. Out of my 3 kids, he was the only one that listened to me. And again, you think I'm kidding. There are a lot of things I want to talk about tonight. Some of it might make sense, some of it might not make sense. I guess, are we doing a question and answer at the end? Okay, the real problem that you have, did any of you listen to parts of the show today? I've already told you more than I know. Just so you know. That's the full disclosure. But we'll walk through it and talk about some things. Somebody asked me right at the back of the room, they said, so do you enjoy doing talk radio? Well, you don't do it for the money, I'll tell you that. And then I said, let me ask you this, do you enjoy listening to me on talk radio? And then he, I never got an answer. But I'm really moved by things that happened. If you remember 9/11, if you were with me in the studio right now, the studio is about half the size of this platform. And I sit back here at a console, and there's a big console here. And my producer, Liberal Chris, I'm not making that up, sits on the other side. And then right here is a big glass window, and in there is the newsroom. And I remember when 9/11 happened, things just went crazy. You know, we all remember where we were when we found out about 9/11. You know where you were when you heard about it. You know where you were when the second plane hit and all that. And we went through all that too. And a bunch of us just congregated at the newsroom. I mean, you know, I wasn't even on except on Saturdays at the time. And we shot out there and I was at the newsroom. I don't know what we thought we were going to accomplish, but we all just felt like we had to be there. And the things were crazy. At one point, I was on 5 different news wires, and we actually thought at one point we were actually tracking 7 planes. I mean, everything was so confusing that day. But the most moving thing about 9/11 to me was the next day, because the next day I normally wasn't scheduled to be on. Back in those days, back in 2001, when the morning news stopped at 9, from 9 to noon, we had Dr. Laura on, where now we have Glenn Beck. He's a little different than Dr. Laura. I can listen to Glenn. If I'm having a bad day, the last thing I want is Dr. Laura screeching at me about what a horrible person I am. Do I have an amen? Amen. Yeah. Dr. Laura, GBYGO, God bless you, get out. So they had me on for about 2 weeks during that 9 to 12 slot, and things just kept coming and coming. And when I'm on and I'm back there at the console, I've got 3 computer monitors in front of me, and on one of them is where I see your phone calls. And it will tell me that Jim has called, and he's calling from Fort Wayne, and he's on a cell phone, and here's a brief synopsis of what he wants to talk about. And so the calls all get lined up, and then that's when I know whether I want to talk to him or not or whatever. Well, it was the day after 9/11, and I'll never forget, there was a call. Of course, the phones went crazy. You remember how nutty things were then. And it came up and it said, Misty, from New York, but having to drive home from Chicago because she can't fly. Remember, all the planes were down. So I thought, okay. Well, there were so many calls. By the time I got to her, when she had called, she was the other side of Columbia City, and now she was almost to Van Wert. And I finally picked up the call and said, Misty, line 3, hi, how are you? And she was very somber and all that, and we talked a little bit. And do you ever just sense something in your spirit sometimes? I just stopped and I said, Misty, can I ask you a question? Is there more going on than what we've talked about here? I mean, I know we're in a turmoil right now, but is there something else? And she said to me, she said, yesterday morning, I was one of 4 children. Today, I'm the only one left. A brother and sister in this tower and a brother in that tower. That makes 9/11 get very real very fast. And let me just say this, too, to the wonderful men and women that try to serve us on the Capitol. After talking to Misty and then seeing you on the steps of the Capitol the night that we were attacked, and you're locking arms and you're saying, it doesn't matter if we're Democrats or Republicans, we're all Americans, and then you sing God Bless America. If you're going to do that, and then 2 weeks later, you're attacking each other over how to connect the dots and who did what and whose fault it is and all that. And if when we go to battle, if you're going to sit there and tell them when it is that we're going to pull out so that they know what's going on, if you're going to do all that, do me a favor. The next time we're attacked, don't come out on the steps and sing, because I know how the song goes, I don't need your platitudes. Okay, I don't need any of that. I know how the song goes. I'll spend my time talking to Misty. I've talked to enough congressmen and senators, I don't really need them. But it jars you. It pulls everything into perspective when you go through something like a 9/11. Dr. Martin Luther King says that the ultimate measure of a man is not what he does and where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at the times of challenge and controversy. That was true the day after 9/11, and it's true the day before whatever's coming tomorrow. We stand in a moment where we are in the midst of controversy and challenge, some like we've never seen before. I don't know about you, but I sense many times that my church and that my family are challenged more than ever before. And sometimes by the people who stood on the steps and tried to sing God Bless America to me. And it causes you to rethink something like a 9/11, who you are as a person. Now, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just telling you how things shaked out for me. These are the 5 points of Pat Miller's life. And the thing that I found is I need all 5 of them. And if I get any of them out of order, I mess up the one that comes after it. Number 1, you need to have a right and proper relationship with God. And for me, I'm just very proud to say to me, that's Jesus Christ and Him crucified, buried, risen, and coming again for me. I need to have a right relationship with Jesus Christ in my life. Secondly, I need to be a proper husband, and then I need to be a good father. And I've had people challenge me on that. They say, wait a minute, shouldn't you be the father first because your kids need you and you have them for a shorter period of time? Let me tell you something. If you've listened to the program at all, you've heard me say this several times. More things that we pass on to our children are caught, not taught. The best thing for me to do for my 2 daughters in my life is for them to see what it looks like when a man is absolutely in love with his wife and no one else. And if you picture that to them over and over, and by the way, you can't fake them out. They know. You might fool everybody at church. You might fool everybody, in your club. You might fool everybody at work. You don't fool the kids because they see it all. They know if that love is genuine and real. I want my daughters someday to look full into the face of some young, godly man and to have him look at her in such a way she goes, aha, I've seen that look before. That's how Dad looks at Mom. So for me, first of all, a right relationship with God, then a right relationship with the lovely Mrs. Miller, and then a right relationship with Shan and Courtney. Then after that, I am a conservative, and then after that, I'm a Republican. If you get those last two out of order, you are so screwed up. If you sell your soul out to the party, congratulations, because that's all the farther you're going. I want it so that when I put my name to something, it means something. When 56 men gathered together to sign the Declaration, can you picture that room? Here you've got these guys all standing around. They've been debating back and forth, and finally, they have finally crafted together what it is they think that they want to say. Now, this is not how it went. Hey, come on over here and sign this right after me. This is going to be so cool. Someday, this thing's going to hang in the library at Bluffton High School. Come on. It's not why they signed it. This was a parchment that they were signing to send to the King of England to basically look at him, and if you'll excuse the vernacular, to look at the king and go, right? They had tried getting along. The Tea Party was not revolution. The Tea Party was about trying to get everything resolved. And the king wouldn't do resolution. The king wouldn't listen. Imagine that, a government that won't listen to the people, huh? Thank goodness we don't have, well, wait a minute. Carry the one. Yeah, we might have a problem. So basically they came and they signed it. And have you ever noticed all the way from back in junior high school when you saw copies of the Declaration for the very first time, have you ever seen how big John Hancock's signature is? Do you know why? Because someday he wanted to own an insurance company. He wanted everybody to know. No. He said that he wanted the king to know exactly where he stood. So he wanted his name to be unmistakable. I might say a few things a little bit later. Not that the President of the United States will ever hear it, but I've addressed him directly before, and I've addressed him through tape before, and let me just say, I do want him to know exactly where I stand, because I think it's important. I honor him for his office. That doesn't mean I have to swallow the policies. And there is a difference. There's absolutely a difference. Our faith is so important. Patrick Henry said it cannot be emphasized too strongly or too often that this great nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians. Not on religion, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. In his farewell address, George Washington said, "Do not let anyone claim tribute of American patriotism if they even attempt to remove religion from politics." Thomas Jefferson, and I want you to listen to this, because so often when the argument comes up about separation of church and state, the conservative answer sometimes is, well, there is no separation of church and state. Yeah, there is. Oh, yes, there is. Let's go back to a guy that was there and see what he said. Make sure you listen to what I say here, okay? How old are you? 14? What grade are you in? Okay, freshman. Would you go to school at Bluffton? Okay, Adams Central? Cool, okay. If you ever study the Constitution in class, what are the odds? By the way, if you ever do it, make sure that you remember Thomas Jefferson, Danbury Baptist. Okay, this is the letter he wrote to the Danbury Baptists, and in that he said, "The First Amendment has created a wall of separation between church and state. But that wall is a one-directional wall. It keeps the government from running the church, but it makes sure that Christian principles will always stay in government. I just have a real strong suspicion that when our president pushed through some recent HHS regulations relative to Obamacare, I think Thomas Jefferson was doing some spinning in the grave. John Adams, we have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution is designed only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for any other. You realize these guys I just quoted wouldn't even be able to run for office today? They would. I mean, can you imagine John King at CNN hearing Thomas Jefferson and John Adams saying some of this stuff and then going, well, what do you mean by that? John Adams looking, well, what do you think I mean by it, pinhead? If the president were here, I think I'd just be really tempted to say to him, Mr. President, you can call it cap and trade, you can call it cap and tax, you can call it corporate bailouts, you can call it whatever you want. You can call me a Tea Partier, a Bible thumper, a God and gun clinger, you can do whatever. You are mortgaging the future of our country. You are mortgaging the inheritance that I want to pass for my children. You are mortgaging the very survival of our nation. For the first time in history, freshmen and sophomores, when they are surveyed at college universities across the country, when they're asked, do you think that you're going to have a better country than what was handed to your parents, and do you think that you'll be able to go further than your parents? Now they're saying no. Every other time the survey had been done over the course of the last 83 years, the answer had always been yes. We are stifling and mortgaging the very American dream that we are. Now, some would say, in fact, some great political theologians, great minds like Janine Garofalo, would say that the reason we take some of the stands that we do against some of the policies of our current president is because that we're racist. Did you hear the show today when I talked about Samuel Jackson? Did you hear why it was the great actor said he voted for Barack Obama? I voted for him because he was black and only because he was black. So I made the statement today, whoever the Republican nominee ends up being, I'm voting for him because he's white, and that's the only reason. So I'm just waiting for a burning something to show up in my front yard. I hope it's a U.S. senator. And I hope I get to pick which one. Look, it's not about race. As God is my witness, I am thankful that 50 years after the time when black kids would not be able to sit with you on a school bus, when a black man would not be able to sit at the same lunch counter as you, when a black woman would not be able to go in and have her hair done where some of you ladies have your hair done. I thank God that we've gotten to the point that in this nation a black man can reside at the White House. But to put somebody in there merely because they're black, and then to say because they're black they're there, and now what they do with policies, you just take it and swallow it. I'm not hungry. I have no intention of swallowing it. I'm wondering if Mr. Jackson would have been as excited about Herman Cain. I wonder if he was as quick to say that when we had a black justice going on to the Supreme Court, that he greatly honored that. Doubt it, because they were the wrong kinds of blacks. You start hearing words like Uncle Toms and sellouts and Oreos. Don't ever say that to me. You have no idea how long it's been since I've had an Oreo. Somebody said to me at church yesterday, they said, look, you keep griping about your diet, at least you're not dead. I said, not yet. We seem to find ourselves surrounded by a bunch of people, a group of people, a philosophy. We seem to find ourselves surrounded by those who don't seem to be able to get anything done except the things that the American people don't want done. For example, the Health Care Reform Act. Call it Obamacare, call it whatever you want to call it. 73% of Americans said, we don't want it. How many of you in this room tonight want it? Don't be afraid of me. I don't know, the gun's in the car. How many of you? By the way, it is in the car. And if you don't line up after, how do you think I get to be Salesman of the Month? Huh? Here are some hurdles I think that we need to get over before we're going to make a change in our country. And these are serious hurdles. This will sound simplistic, but I want you to think about it, and then we're going to talk about it. Number one, how serious is the problem? I think it's pretty serious. I had a young man call me today, and I don't know if he's trying to hide it or what, but in the midst of his talking, we were talking about the fact of would you support anybody on the Republican side versus President Obama. And he said, well, were you listening today? Yeah. Well, I'm a log cabin Republican, and you know what that means. And so I said, so you're homosexual, right? And he was like, shh. Now, here's what came out of the whole conversation. The fact that he's homosexual, I don't care. He's not marrying my daughter, I don't care. Okay, and he's not marrying me. I mean, I'm cute, but I have standards, all right? And my wife's not letting me go. She informed me after dinner last night that she realized she was never getting her money back out of me after 37 years, unless, of course, she can put me on the street corner and sell me by the pound. She said that after I'd paid for dinner. Very smart woman. This young man, a homosexual Republican, by the time we got to the end of the conversation, basically, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, basically this was the gist of what he said. I can't vote for a Santorum or a Gingrich, and the reason that I can't is because I know from things I've heard about them and their God talk that they would not put forward policies that would help me basically as a homosexual. To which I then asked him, do you like where the country's been over the course of the last 3.5 years? No. Do you think the country will be better off if we have what we have now for another 4 years? No. So I said to him, and if you listen, I don't know if you know this or not, if you listen to the program, on occasion, this is just rare, but on occasion, sometimes I'm opinionated. It comes out, sometimes it just leaks out. You have to look for it. I said, so let me get this straight. Because of your singular issue of the homosexual policy, because you're afraid these guys aren't going to push your agenda forward, every other agenda, you're willing to let it go and vote for what's already in the White House, even though you've already said that 4 more years of this would be bad for the country. And he basically said, yeah. To which I said, then you're the one that's intolerant, not me. Do I think homosexuality is proper? Absolutely not. Do I think God abhors it? Yes, I do. Do I think we ought to take them all out and shoot them? No. No. Look, can I borrow a stool? Has this thing been weight loaded? How many of you go to church here? Is the pastor here? Where? How are you, sir? You are way too thin. Are you sure you're a man of God? Are these people not taking care of you? Dude, I just teach a Bible class on Sundays. Take a gander at me. There's so much dressing in me, I can do Thanksgiving all by myself. I'm going to try this. You ready? Notice that I've only been willing to commit one cheek. I'm sort of committed. if we have people like the homosexual crowd, look, you can go off on a tangent if you want, but a great lesson was taught to me on our church platform one Sunday morning about 4 or 5 years ago. It was Memorial Day. And as part of Memorial Day, we had men in uniform in our church, and I brought up one of the young men, and I was interviewing him on our platform. I'm one of the worship leaders in our church, which should just scare you to death. We are not Pentecostal in our church, and the reason really isn't doctrine. They just don't have enough room for me to dance. I mean, think about that, okay? I mean, I'll clear a patch and just have a fit, And I asked him at the end of our interview, I said, so Jake, tell me, how could we best pray for you? Now, I'm talking to a guy who's getting ready to go back for his second deployment. He's about 25 years old. He's married, 2 kids. So I'm expecting the standard answers. Pray that the wife and kids will be okay while I'm gone. Pray that our needs will be met. Pray that everything goes okay. Do you know what his prayer was? Pray that I can be a stronger witness so that when I come across Taliban and Al-Qaeda, I'll have a better chance of winning them to Christ. Whew. Felt about that tall. Huh? Let me ask you a question. Did he have it right? Yeah. Why, Pat, why are you so tolerant of homosexuals? Does that mean you agree with them? No, that means they need to come to Christ. Listen, can I just say this? Forgive me, I know I'm not preaching a sermon tonight, but can I just say this? Nobody goes to hell because they're homosexual. You go to hell because you don't accept the purchase payment of the blood of Christ shed on the cross and sprinkled on the mercy seat of heaven. That's why you don't go to heaven. Now, you may not like that, but if you've been wrong before, you just did it again. I don't know. So, but one of the things we need to do is we need to realize how serious the problem is. The young man I talked to today didn't realize the seriousness of the problem. He's so blinded by his one little issue that he's going to let the country rot and slide straight into hell on earth because he needs his little issue. Well, there won't be any country left for to have your issue in. One of the feels like a country sometimes. One of the companies that I sell for is Everence Financial, which used to be Mennonite Mutual Aid, okay? Now, I don't know if you know this about Mennonites and Mennonite preachers. They're not always right, but they're never in doubt, okay? And so I was in a conversation with one of my vice presidents from, at that time, MMA one time on the phone because somebody had heard something that I had said on a radio program. And so he called me and he said, well, somebody heard something and I just wanted to call and talk to you about it. I said, fine, what's up? Well, it seems that you're in support of the troops. My first response was, and? So we went, and this phone conversation literally went about an hour and a half. Never got nasty, but it was just back and forth. And so then he said, well, I love you, and I know you love me, and I know you love the company, and blah, blah, blah. I said, look, Dave, you're a great guy. He said, I said, but it's not like it's not in the Bible. And he said, and I love it. I love it and hate it when they do this. Well, I'm pretty sure that if we examine it, that's Old Testament. It's like, I hope it doesn't rain because your nose is so high you'll drown. To which I said to him, who's the perfect example of everything in life? And he said, Jesus Christ. I said, well, let me ask you 2 questions. Number one, when Jesus uses a parable or an illustration, when did he ever use something that was sinful or wrong to demonstrate something good? Never. Luke 14, when he talks about what it takes to be a good disciple, he talks about the king who's getting ready to go to battle will first examine and see what kind of a king he's up against, and he'll test his army against that army to see what it might cost him, to try to work it out peacefully first, but then to know what the ultimate battle is going to cost him. Well, that's just some kind of... I said, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that the Bible is true? My friend who's now dead, Reuben Fields, who was a pastor at a Black Baptist church in downtown Indianapolis, I used to love it when we'd take our trio and go sing at his church for 2 reasons. I got a great blessing, scared my wife to death. Because when you'd go to Reuben's church, he would always get up, and they had this enormous pulpit. You've seen the great big oak thing carved out, you know, with the cross in the front and all that, and they had the big high back chair. You don't have any high back chairs. So they don't feed you and they don't respect you either. All right. But they'd have the big high back chairs, and the pastor sat here, and the associate pastor sat here, and all the lesser pastors sat there. And the guys that were pretty nice guys, we let them clean the bathroom, but they can't preach. They sat on chairs out there. And Reuben Fields was an enormous man. He was like 6'8", and about this broad, the blackest man I'd ever seen. Sweetest spirit. But he always wore pinstripe suits. They always had the three-piece, he had the vest, and he always had the pocket watch where the gold chain came and through the loop and over the other side. And I don't know why he had a watch. In the years that I knew him, that church never started on time, and he certainly never kept sermons to anything less than an hour, much like you're going to experience here tonight. And I remember one time he got up, and the way it worked in the church, and when we would come and sing there, the congregation on those Sunday nights would be about half black and half white. Terrific guy. And he'd get up and he'd start, and he'd adjust his watch, and he had this huge Bible he carried. And he'd open it, and he had those little half glasses. They had a chain too. And he'd say, well, tonight, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Word of God. And somebody over here go, well, go ahead. I believe what I'm going to do tonight is share with you a little bit from the Scriptures, and maybe God the Father, with the help of the Son and with the unction of the Holy Spirit, will teach us a thing or two. And some lady over here would, once with her hanky, go, yes, sir. That's how it started. By the time he's done with the sermon, he is back and forth. He's ripping paint off the wall. And I'll never forget this little sermon about the Bible. He gets down toward the end and he goes, brothers and sisters, I believe this book from cover to cover, and sometimes I think I even believes the cover. And they're all like, yeah! Yeah! People are jumping and hollering, yeah! And then he looks and he goes, now, I'm a little surprised that some of you are so exercised when, since we met Sunday last until this, some of you who are very excited about the Word, I dare guess you haven't even cracked it open and read it. Wow. You ever had your car run out of gas? That deep sinking feeling as you realize you can pump the gas pedal all you want, you're not going anywhere? That congregation immediately ran out of gas. Reuben Fields. Some people are like that about the Constitution, by the way. I'm amazed. I wonder, sitting here tonight, I wonder how many people in different offices throughout the city, the state, and in our federal government, I wonder how many people have said to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and they've not even read it.
That's right.
Not even read it.
That's right.
What is it you're preserving and protecting and defending? Well, we'll just pass it, and then later we can read it and see what's inside. Where are you sending me? Well, Ms. Pelosi, we're just signing the orders for you to go into the little hotel. And once you're inside, then you'll find out that the rooms are padded and the doors are locked. So, we were lying in bed the other night, and Nancy Pelosi's face came up on the screen. She's one of the reasons I actually didn't want to get a larger flat screen in the bedroom. But her picture, I mean, because you're sitting there looking at her, you're going, I think I see one of the injection points right there. But she came up on the screen, and I immediately turned to Kim, and I said, thank you. For what? That when I wake up in the morning and roll over, I'll see this and not that. But when you view how large the problem is, like my little friend that called today, are you willing to do what it takes to change it? Now, here comes change. Are we ready? Are you willing to change to the control from the other party? And are you willing to change leadership within your own party? Amen. See, here's the deal. We either believe it from cover to cover, and sometimes we even believe the cover, or we don't. We either buy into it and we believe it lock, stock, and barrel, or we don't. Some other stuff I wanted to tell you, but I'm talking too long. Could you wave a hanky when you say that, and then I'll feel like... Okay, I'm on. All right. You remember Sonny Bono? Remember Sonny and Cher, right? And you remember Sonny, after they divorced, he kind of went on his own acting gig, and he said one time, he said, I was in Hollywood, and I was on the set of Fantasy Island. He said, as if that wasn't low enough, that I was having to do a guest shot on Fantasy Island again. You know, the same people kept showing up on Fantasy Island and Love Boat. Did you catch that? They just kept showing up. Betty White, I think, got married 18 times in 2 seasons on those 2 shows. And he said, and I was sitting there, he says, and my mind just wasn't in on it. He goes, you know, I'd come from where, you know, when Cher and I would travel, we're in the best hotel rooms and finest planes. He says, now I'm sharing like half a Winnebago on the back of the lot with some other actor I don't know, and I'm up there, and I blow my lines. And he says, Hervé Villechaize, you remember him? De play, starts cussing him out. He says, I stopped dead. He says, and I'm just standing there. I don't even really want to be there. And Hervé's standing there going, he says, and as he's standing there, he says, in the back of my head, it hit me, and I went, thank you, God. My career is over. Thank you. And he walked off the set. He never even finished that episode. And he thought, you know what? I have a place in Palm Springs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Palm Springs, take some of the money I've saved back. I'm going to open a nice Italian restaurant, Sonny Bono's. How many people would go eat at Sonny Bono's in Palm Springs, California, right? So he went out there and he decided to open it up, and so he went to get his permit because he found out you had to go to the city clerk to get the permit. And so the first day he went, the city clerk wasn't there. City clerk was gone on a coffee break. So he came back the next day, city clerk wasn't there, city clerk was at lunch. So he came back the next day, like at 2:30, city clerk wasn't there because city clerk was taking an elongated lunch. So then finally after about 5 visits, city clerk was there, but city clerk couldn't help him because city clerk didn't have the right forms. By the way, as an insurance executive, let me just tell you, forms are of the devil. I haven't found the verse yet. I know it's there. I'll find it, okay? I know the truth. I'm just looking for a verse to back me up. Forms are of the devil. And he said, I don't have the form. This goes on for like 2 weeks. And finally, the city clerk looks at Sonny Bono and says, you know, I've been thinking, and I'm really thinking that in this area, we probably already have enough Italian restaurants. So Sonny Bono looked at him and says, well, you know what, that's okay, because I think I've actually changed my mind. I think I'm actually going to do a career change. And he went, oh, really? I said, yeah, this is what we're going to do. I've decided I think I'm going to run for mayor of Palm Springs. And when I do, I'm going to fire you. And he did, and he did. Now, if you're going to make a change, the kind of change you need to do, what you need to do is the change worth it to do whatever it takes to get there? Or is it just a bunch of malarkey? I mean, is it just a bunch of baloney? Is it going to take your time? Are you just wasting your time, spinning your wheels, or if we're going to go after this thing? So we just need to make the decision. Because sometimes real change is hard, it's painful, it's difficult, it's time-consuming, it's mind-numbing, it's frustrating, it's full of tumult and conflict. But if it's what you need to do, you do it. I hate going to the doctor. Do we have any doctors in here? Good. Usually I check my crowd first. I blew it last week. I was speaking to a group over near West Lafayette. West Lafayette. You got that locked in your head? I'm an IU basketball fan. Yeah. So we're standing there, and I said something very pro-IU, and the room kind of growed. And I said, okay, I get it. And they all said, it's okay, it's okay. I said, to be honest with you guys, now about half the room are attorneys. They're all Purdue fans. Are anybody here Purdue fans? Okay. Here's what you need to pray for the next 30 seconds. So what I said, Pastor, are you a Purdue fan? No, sir. Attaboy. So what I said is, this may come as a surprise to you, but when I go to watch basketball games, I'd much rather go watch them at Mackey Arena than I would Assembly Hall. And one of the guys down front said, why? I said, because when you go to watch a basketball game at Mackey Arena, you don't have all those championship banners blocking your view. Just know, had we not beaten Purdue just a few weeks ago, I would have tried that. And I wouldn't try it if tonight was the night we're playing them again. I'm actually going to be at that game when Purdue goes to IU. So you'll know who won if I'm on the air the next day. Here's what you need to do. We need to decide, are we willing to step up to the plate to do what it takes to do change, or are we just willing to sit around and hug each other and try to comfort each other while we experience the decay together? Because those are the two alternatives the way I see them. I will say this to you. I mean, I've heard this ever since I was a kid. You've heard it. I've never meant it more than I'm saying it right now in my life. I don't ever remember a time when an election has meant so much as the elections that we have coming up this fall. Between executive decisions, czars, and what was said the day before yesterday, under dire circumstances, the potential to call for martial law, okay? If all that's hanging there, let me ask you this. If the president, for great dire reasons, enforced martial law and had to temporarily take over absolute control of the country for the better of the country, do you think it's so he can put forward the kinds of things you and I would agree to? I don't think so. So this stuff matters. Let me ask you this question, for example. If I say to you, if you can't afford a house, then you shouldn't what? Is that difficult? Is that difficult? Who said common sense? How dare you? Well, in the United States, what we were saying for the last 25 years was if you can't afford to buy a house, we'll waive your credit. If you can't afford to buy a house, we'll waive the down payment. If you can't afford to buy a house, we'll waive your principal payment for 3 years. And guess what we learned? Here's what we learned. Turns out that if you can't afford to buy a house, that the first time the roof leaks, or the first time you need to call the plumber for something major, or the first time you need an electrician to come in to do something, the first time an appliance goes bad, guess what? You really can't afford a house. Because you can't even fix the things in the house. And that's what we learned. Now, if you do that to a family, it's a personal tragedy. If you do that to millions of families, it's a national crisis. Welcome to the national crisis. Let's take it from houses to something else. We all love each other, right? Yes? If you have a school that isn't functioning, then you should replace it. If you have teachers that aren't functioning, then they should go. If you have principals that aren't functioning, they should be gone. I don't care what union, I don't care what association, I don't care what organization. Our purpose is either education or it's not. Now, this is not going to be fixed until something bigger gets fixed, and this is where the big payment comes. It's not going to be fixed until we reach into Washington, D.C., we grab the Department of Education, and we yank it back to the states where it belongs in the first place. Right. If you look in your Constitution and you start seeing all of the enumerated powers that are laid out, they're fairly clear. And there are a whole lot of things that my government seems to be very busy about, and they're busy about it with my money, that they seem to be spending a whole lot of time doing a whole lot of things that aren't in their enumerated list. Now, the last time I checked, how many of you have a copy of the Constitution at home? Okay? How many of you have read it? Don't make me come down there. Go home and read the 10th Amendment. If it's not in the Constitution that it is expressly given as a power to the country, to the federal government, then it falls to the states and to the people. End of statement. Why do we spend $1 sending it to Washington, D.C. to go through the Department of Education to come back valued at 73 cents with all the strings attached for them to tell us how to run our schools when they've never even seen our kids, they've never even seen our schools, and they can't even fix the schools where they came from. Really? Our Secretary of Education, have you seen the marvelous work he did in Chicago? Wow. So the other day, I'm reading about the excitement of some of the senators over the fact that in the last congressional session, we made sure that we had done the extension of unemployment up to 99 weeks. I have a slight alteration I'd like to do for the extension of the unemployment. First of all, I'd be much more happy if they had extended employment. Any of you in here own a small business? Okay. How do you like it that the government's your enemy? You enjoying that? Yeah, me too. I'm thrilled. By the way, I'm self-employed. Are you self-employed? Okay, yeah. If you and I lose our companies and we lose our jobs, we don't go on the unemployment numbers. Okay? Do you realize that they say unemployment right now is at 8.4? Do you know all you have to do is go back and count numbers exactly the same way that they were counted in January of the year that President Obama became president? And if you count them along the same guidelines, exactly the same way, and you bring the same people into the same numbers, it's not 8.4, it's 10.3. Let me tell you what's happening. They're going to get that number down below 8 come heck or high water before the election. One way or another, they're going to bend whatever numbers. Just look around your neighborhood. The guy that was out of a job 6 months ago, is he not still out of a job? Okay, well then where are all these people coming from? I like saved or created. We saved or created 3 million jobs. My daughter Shannon, who works for the congressman, she had difficulty with her car. She came to me, she goes, Dad, I hate to ask you this. She goes, the car needs this, this, and this. She goes, I have $1,200. I need another $600. I said, okay. And she goes, thanks. I said, so are you really hurting? And she said, well, I looked back over my budget over the last 2 months, and I saved and spent $3,000. But the save part didn't seem to be as large as one might hope. And I thought, this kid has a future in politics. You know what they found out in Norway? In Norway, unemployment was 5 years. You know what they found out? A miraculous number of them found jobs the 2 to 3 weeks before the 5 years was up, so then they backed it up to 3 years. What did they find out? People started finding jobs 2 to 3 weeks before the 3 years, so then they backed it up to 2. What do you think they found? Duh. Okay. Now, if we extend, look, I'm all for extending beyond the first 4 weeks, another 95 weeks. If you either go to work or you go to school for 3 days a week, and you do whatever it is the state or the schools need you to do 3 days a week, because as long as I'm paying you a salary, you might as well work, because that's how I'm getting my money to pay you to do nothing. So get ready to go to work. And after a while, they'll look at us, and instead of saying, you know what, I can sit on the couch and make almost as much money as if I'm working, pretty soon they'll say, I hate what it is they're having me do cleaning up trash on the side of the streets. I'd be better off going to work. Ta-da! Do you know that in New York right now, the New York Times reports that the Long Island Railroad, of all their retirees, 97% of the retirees are on disability? 97. Anybody in the room believe that 97% of them are disabled? But what did they find out? You get a higher payment if you're disabled, and all you have to do is claim that you're disabled. So 97. So what's the big deal? Oh, I don't know, $250 million more a year over the last 10 years? Well, Bill's doing it, and Fred's doing it, and Jim's doing it, so I figured I might as well do it. So if they're stealing, it's stealing. So if I shoot Jim, and I shoot Bill, and I shoot Fred, then you're ready for your bullet. Is that what we're saying? You're not going to keep this country alive if we become nothing but an entire society of liars and cheats, and that's rapidly what we're becoming. And by the way, that's one of the byproducts of becoming an entitlement society. We used to have a phrase in this country, and it said, an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. There also used to be a saying in the Soviet Socialist Republic. It said, the state pretends to pay us and we pretend to work. Let me tell you something. Here's the scary part. As I look around the country, I see a lot more people in the United States functioning as if they're in the old USSR than they're in what America used to be. And that scares me just a tad bit. I spoke to somebody who was on the station with me, I think it was in March of last year. And he was here speaking at IPFW, and he was from China. And when we were off the mic and off topic, I was talking to him, and he looked at me and he goes, why is your country borrowing so much money? I don't think I would have bothered with the conversation, except he is Chinese, and I was afraid someday he'd own me. He said, why are you failing to invest in the future? He said, you guys have stimulus packages. We have investment packages. He said, what you're doing looks nuts to us. And I said, well, it kind of looks nutty to me too. So he said, so why are you doing this? And it drove me to go back and to do some studying. Now, some of you, the younger ones, you won't get this. This is another one to look up when you get back to Adams Central. Are you in the marching band there, by the way? Are you really? No kidding? Your band director is one of the greatest guys I know. He really is. Terrific guy. Marching band is a great activity, by the way. It is a sport for those of you that don't know. Okay? And how many of you have had kids in marching band? Is it not the next best religion you've ever had? Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping was part of the communist group that was running China back in the Mao era. And Deng Xiaoping was probably one of the 4 great liberators of humans in the last century, along with people of the likes of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan and John Paul II. He was arrested 3 or more times because he would constantly go up and argue and challenge Mao Zedong about the impossibility of Mao's model. Well, Deng Xiaoping in 1978 got the Communist Chinese Party to adopt the principle that you have to create jobs, and that to create jobs, you have to have a market economy. That was a communist dictatorship. Now, I'm not advocating communism, and I'm not advocating a dictatorship. We're close enough to that now. But what I'm saying is this. They had to come to the realization, and Deng Xiaoping basically sold it to the guys higher up in the government and basically said to them, look, I get it that we're in control, but just so you know, if we don't create jobs, they're going to throw us out. It will eventually get to the point that they will absolutely just throw us out. So he undertook what he called the Southern Tour, where he went all through the southern part of the country to help people understand about working and working hard and becoming what they could be. And he goes across the South and he gives these speeches, and he's in a city in South Central China, and if you go to that city today, next to a bridge that goes across the big ravine where the river is, there are these 2 enormous cats. They're 14 feet tall, carved out of stone. One of them's black and one of them's white. And the reason that they're there is that it's in that city that Deng Xiaoping was standing there, and he said, look, I don't care if the cat is black or if the cat is white. I only care if it catches the mouse. Now, what he's saying, he's saying, look, you don't have to tell me the communist dogma. Chairman Mao, I get it. Don't tell me ideology. But can you create jobs or not? Because if we don't, we won't be here. When you have businesses over here complaining, and when you have union workers here complaining, and when you have laborers here complaining, they're complaining because a lot of the jobs go where? If you have a system where they don't catch the mice, you have to change the cat. That's basically what he's saying. You have to change the system. There is nothing wrong with our system. Our system will catch the mouse every time if the cat is allowed to run around and be a cat. If a small business is allowed to be a small business. if in fact freedom is allowed to be free, if market is allowed to be the market, if entrepreneurship is allowed to be entrepreneurial, it will catch the mouse and it will do it every time. Every time. I was in Rogers, Arkansas. I spoke at a church in Rogers, Arkansas. It's much like Shoals, Indiana. In fact, when you're down there, you've got Fayetteville, which is where the University of Arkansas is, and it goes from Fayetteville right into Springdale, Arkansas, and then it goes right into Rogers, and tacked onto the side of it is Bentonville. Does anybody know what started in Bentonville, Arkansas? Walmart. Thank you very much. So I'm speaking at a church, this little Southern Baptist church on a Sunday night. There's about 300 people there. And when it's all over, the pastor came up to me after it was done, and he was getting ready to take me back to the little hotel I was staying at, and he said, you know, Sam Walton was in the building tonight. Which then I got like really nervous. I'm glad he told me that after I spoke than before I spoke. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He says, he wants to come by and pick you up at the hotel at 8 in the morning, and he's going to take you to breakfast. All righty then. So I get up in the morning, I think I showered twice, you know, and you get all every hair's in place. And I didn't put on a suit, but I made sure everything was proper and all that. He pulls up in like an 8-year-old Ford pickup truck. He had blue jeans on and plaid shirt, and we just went to some place with the biscuits and gravy weren't even that good, okay? We just went, we ate. And I'm talking to him, and he was the most amazing guy. And I said, how? How? I mean, I went by his home office there. There were guys that were graduating from Ivy League schools that were moving to Bentonville, Arkansas, and they were in their Pierre Cardin shoes and their $2,000 Italian suits, and they were living in Bentonville, Arkansas, because they were trying to figure out what this guy was doing. And Sam Walton looked at me and says, I just want to be an honest guy, and I just want to sell stuff. Is that tough? Do you realize that if Sam Walton was starting out right now, he probably wouldn't make it? And in fact, in our government, there are some things at work right now that if they could pull it off, they won't be making it a year from now. If in fact the president was here tonight, and I mean this is sincere, look, I honor him for his office. In fact, I would tell him that. In fact, I said this one day on the air, which I printed it out and brought it tonight. Mr. President, we honor you as president, and we respect you for the office that you hold. But we expect you to also respect and honor the office that you hold, and the land of which you have been made custodian, over which you took the oath to do so, and you took that oath before God. Mr. President, and by same token, members of Congress, by your solemn oath you have taken, I implore you to do as you promised, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And if you do that, you will find a people who may not agree with every policy of yours, but they will honor, respect, and as best they can, follow you. But you were not elected to the chore, nor do you have the right to bankrupt us as a people or as a nation and to churn us under like last year's unharvested crop. Mr. President, you must not cause us to become a byword, a forgotten land, or a crumbled empire. Preserve us, Mr. President, or we will. And that's what I would say to him. Again, quoting Dr. Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about the things that matter. Give me 5 more minutes. Immigration. Okay? I believe we need to be compassionate. I believe that we need to be understanding. I believe we need to do everything that we can to resolve what we're doing. But number one, nothing matters until you decide that you're going to close that border like a vault door. Then decide what and how you're going to do with those that are here. And in all of them, I don't call it amnesty, but in all of them, if you want to fast track them on their way to citizenship, that's fine. But it happens with them ending up back in their native country, and if they get in the front of the line there to pass back through, that's fine. Because when they come back through, I don't care if they've only been home for 3 months. When they come back through, I want to know who they are, where they came from, how they got here, and what is the job that's waiting for them. How many of you, your moms and dads, came from outside this country? My father was born just outside of Dublin, Ireland. My great-grandmother and great-grandfather came over from England and from Wales. I still remember my grandmother. I was at the funeral down in Shoals. I was talking to my mom about Grandma Williams just the other day. I can still smell her house in Beech Grove, Indiana. You ever had one of those experiences where all once you get a smell and instantly you're taken back to wherever? I can still smell Grandma's house. She had the most gorgeous china cabinet that had curved glass on the side. If you were a kid, you weren't even allowed to get near it. You couldn't breathe on the cabinet. You weren't allowed, because if you broke it, your mother would send you back to Jesus, okay? I still remember my great-grandmother. She had snow white hair that she would brush every night. She would sit there, and while they watched the evening news, she would brush it every night, and it went clear down to the back of her knees. And then when she would get up in the morning, she would brush it again, and then braid it, and then she'd put it up in the tightest bun up on top of her head. I can still see her. She died in '63. I can still see her. And Grandpa Williams. Grandpa Williams was a woodworker. They never owned a car. Neither of them ever drove. And in his garage out in back of the house there in Beech Grove, he would make me my Christmas gifts every year out of wood. I had the coolest airplanes on the planet. You remember Lockheed Constellations, the planes with the 3 tails? I had one about that big, made out of pine. It was awesome. My brother broke it. It is grace and miracle that Daniel Miller still lives today. In fact, he's married to a very wealthy doctor now. If I knew then what I know now, I would have buried him with the plane. When Grandma and Grandpa came over here from Wales and from England, they came over. Grandpa had come before and had secured a job. I don't even know what the name of the place was, but in Beech Grove, Indiana, which is in the southeast part of Indianapolis. Indianapolis has gone all around it now. But we just called it the shops. It was the place where the train cars used to come through, and they would do all the maintenance on the train cars and the welding and the lubing and all that stuff, and that's where Grandpa worked, and he secured his job. And then they came back over from England. After he'd secured the job, went back to England, wait until his number was up, came through Ellis Island, did all the right things, did all that. And they knew my father, because my father, who was born in Dublin, had done some work down in England, and they knew him, and in corresponding back and forth, he convinced my dad, Patrick, you really should come over here. I need to explain, my name at birth was not Patrick Miller, okay? I was adopted by my stepfather when I was 12. When I was born, my name was Patrick Haggerty. You don't get any more Irish than that. You split my wrists, I bleed green, okay? I cry over clover leaves, okay? He said, Patrick, you really should come over here. So on his own dime, my father came over on the boat, made his way to Beech Grove, Indiana, looked around and decided he liked it. The people that ran the shops decided they liked him. So they said, if you're as good a worker as Grandpop here, you'll have a job when you come over. And they gave him the papers, and he went back to Ireland. Waited for his number to come up. Came back again by boat on his own dime. Went through Ellis Island. Signed his name. Made his way to Beech Grove, Indiana. Worked until he had the money to go through the classes, to take the citizenship class, to take the test, so he could raise his hand and become a citizen of the United States of America. I used to love to be around my dad later in life, and I remember one time he says, you know, I've been over here so long, my Irish brogue is gone. And I'm like, right. We're we're on the ham radio one night, and he's talking to a guy in Ireland, and we got to the end of the broadcast. He was signing off, and he says, "May the good Lord hold you in the hollow of his hand." I said, "Oh yeah, Dad, it is gone. You're just like a native." My dad died 6 years ago down in Margate, Florida. Grandma and Grandpa Williams are buried out in Memorial Park out on the east side of Indianapolis. Grandma's coffin was the most beautiful mahogany you've ever seen, and Grandpa's was bronze. He died a year and a day after her. I was only 9 years old. I still remember him looking at my mom saying, I just don't see why hanging around without her. And he died, and they're buried there. The next time I get a caller that says, well, I may not be legal, but I've been here and I work hard, and like a guy said to me a couple weeks ago, you guys owe me. Tell you what, come with me and let's go down to Margate, Florida, and you walk up to the tombstone of Patrick Hegarty of Dublin, Ireland, and you apologize to him. Because he made sure he did it right. I am not against immigration. I'm against illegal immigration. I'm not against driving. I'm against illegal driving. Were it not for immigration, none of us would be here. Unless every morning you, right? None of us would be here. But ladies and gentlemen, if we don't get a handle on immigration, the day will rapidly come that we will no longer be able to control what it is that happens within our own borders. Anybody know anybody in England? Get a hold of your friends in London. Ask them how well things are going in the Sharia courts, because they have them. Within 20 years, France will be a Muslim nation. They say that no nation, that no society is able to sustain itself if you fall below 2.6 children per family in propagating yourself. 2.6. In the United States, over the course of the last 10 years, we're at 1.9. In England, they're in 1.7. In France, they're at 1.4. The Muslim populations of the world are at 6.4. You tell me. Do I hate them? No. Am I going to waste my time trying to make them like me? No. I'll do everything I can to win them to Christ. That I will do. My attitude and what anger is there is not toward those people. They're doing what they're taught. They're doing what it is that they think they're supposed to do. When you come into this place and your good pastor comes up here and he cracks open that Bible that I know you've read since Sunday, and he shares with you what it is that God wants you to be and how it is to be a true, genuine disciple, so that you're following so close to Jesus Christ that the dust of the disciple is all over the front of you. I know that you want to follow. Well, that's what they're doing. You know, when they have their imams and everybody stand up and tell them what it is they're supposed to do, it's all they know. I'm more concerned about the people here who are supposed to preserve, protect, and defend, because they're doing none of the above. And that's the greater problem. Going back quickly to the men that signed that declaration, 56 of them. Man, they paid a huge price. Because when you're getting ready to tell the king of the most powerful nation on earth to take a flying leap, it's going to cost you something. It costs some of them property. It costs some of them their businesses. It costs some of them their children, and it costs some of them their own lives. But they did it. But they did it. Sometimes if it costs more than $10, you and I don't want to be bothered. When they signed that declaration, some of them hesitated. This was a big deal. Like I said, they weren't just signing this thing so it could hang in the Bluffton High School library. And there was a gentleman, if you go home and if you do a search on it, look up the unknown visitor or the unknown guest at the signing of the declaration. There was a gentleman who had hung around all the proceedings. He didn't say much, he just kind of sat in the back. And essentially, if you'll allow me the paraphrase, when he saw them hesitating, he stands up, and as he starts to walk from the back of the room toward the desk where they're at, he says, "You men, why do you hesitate? Why do you hesitate? When the heartbeat of a nation is screaming and calling, when the blood of our young is already being spilled on the battlefield to pay for whatever it is that you do on this parchment, why would you ever wait? Why would you hesitate? Why, when we know that it is God Almighty who wants to set apart a land, not just a land for anybody, and not just a land to recognize the freedom of worship of anyone, but of the gospel of Jesus Christ, why do you hesitate? You should sign. If the next sound that you hear is the sound of the falling axe, sign, because that document is going to mean freedom for all generations, ours and all those to come. If the next sound you hear is the rattling of your own throat with the last breath for all that's good and righteous, sign it, because that will be the document that will spell freedom for everybody to come after that. For all that's good and bad, for all that means anything, for all of your property and all of your power, with all of your money and with all of your strength, for great God in heaven, sign that thing. And they did. And because of it, here we are. Here we are. And now I have somebody that I'm paying $400,000 a year to live in a house that we provide who can't even defend it. Sir, you may be a great man and a good father, but guess what? You're going to move. As I said to you earlier, you've been most gracious, and as I've also said, I've already told you more than I know. So thank you very much, whatever you want to do. Yeah, if you want to do that, that'd be fine. Well, Leno's not on yet, so I'm good.
Yeah, there we go. I know it's late, but it's been good, and we did promise a question and answer period. So if anybody has something that they would like to ask Pat Miller regarding anything, whether it's local, state, national, whatever's on your heart, feel free to do. Don't make me start.
What do we do?
You know, what you do is, if you've ever seen a great comeback in the second half by a team that's down by 20 or 30 points, what you do is you don't worry about the fact that you're behind 20 or 30 points. How do we get the next score? Because after we get the next score, then we'll get the next one. And then how do we get the next one? Now, please, I don't want to offend anybody here. I felt like in the last election we made some great strides in the House of Representatives. Something that we need to do is we need to shoot for Pennsylvania Avenue, but in doing it, don't sacrifice the Congress, and for the love of Pete, don't forget about the Senate. Because had we owned the Senate, if we had just had 7 more Republican senators, we would have had cut, cap, and balance. But because we didn't, Harry Reid wouldn't even allow it to come to the floor. In fact, I'll just tell you, Harry Reid is a larger problem to the United States right now than Barack Obama. So you have to do it incrementally. We all love each other here, right? I'm not satisfied with somebody just because there's an R after their name. So when it comes to the Senate, I want somebody who is genuinely and truly conservative first and then a Republican. Okay? So that's what I'm shooting for. All right? Yes, sir. Hey, how are you?
Can I just say Richard Murdoch so you don't have to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. You say it, then I'll say amen, then we'll take the paint off the wall. So everybody knows what we're saying, right? Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
The pipeline that Barack just refused to let happen.
Yep.
I understand there's a way that Congress can get around that. Is that true?
There is, if they do it in such a fashion that they can do it where it's legislation, that then he would have to veto the legislation, and then he could still get his way if in fact there were enough people in Congress that they could not overcome his veto. The problem some of them would have is there are even some Democrats in Congress that don't want their name on that because they don't want people screaming. Do you think that, especially there in the breadbasket of the country, do you think maybe 20,000 jobs instantaneously, about 110,000 more jobs over the course of the next 3 years, then all the ancillary businesses that would spring up supplying everything for the pipeline, then all of us, our gas prices going down about half? Do you think people might, maybe, possibly want that? Possibly. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I just think maybe. But the problem that you're going to have is if Congress really got on board, yeah, it could be done. Now, if they expand their majority in the House, and if we get a majority, and it would have to be a bulletproof majority in the Senate, which means 60 senators, then they could do it. That's no small step. But here's the deal. Even if he keeps the White House, if we get 60 senators, his agenda is done. It is done. Beyond done. That might even be more fun to watch. Never mind. I didn't say it. Yes, Jesus loves me.
I have a question.
Okay.
Or just an observation. The other day when I heard on the radio that he had transferred, well, we're not going to make the religious organizations do this. We're just going to make the insurance companies do this. And I knew that, I screamed, that's unconstitutional. He does not have the power to do that.
It's two things. It's unconstitutional and it's stupid.
Right, I understand that. But then, so it wasn't 5 minutes after, I called Marlon Stutzman's office, I called Dan Coates' office, and I called Mike Pence's office, even though he's not in my district. I just disregarded Lugar because I knew it didn't make any difference. So, but I called.
What?
Well, yeah. But anyway, I was very emphatic to those people. I said, I do not want a letter back from them saying, oh, yes, this is terrible. Oh, it's not good. I agree with you. And, you know, I said, what are they going to do? Because if they don't stand up and stop him now, what's your answer to that?
You know what? Here's one of the frustrating things for me over the course of the last 2 weeks. I'm an evangelical Christian, born again, blood bought, however you want to name it, that's where I'm at, okay? I am not Catholic. And I have some doctrinal differences with my Catholic brothers, but I'll tell you what, the Catholics have done more for the country in the last 2 weeks than Republican congressmen have done.
That's right.
I mean, they're taking the fight to them. Part of the problem that you have is there's stuff that's being done, and like, for example, Marlon and Pence, there's stuff that's not even coming back to the floor. He's just saying it, and so this is it, and it's done. What they need to do, in my good view, is they need to go in. I would be thoroughly satisfied with a congressional act of Congress that would do away with Health and Human Services.
Fine. Are they going to do that?
I don't know. I really don't know. But I would be very satisfied to do that.
Because there's one talk show host that's saying that Congress is rapidly becoming irrelevant.
Well, Congress has been irrelevant.
Well,
and to show the irrelevancy, and some of it is they're irrelevant in and of themselves, and sometimes it's irrelevant because they are bound by the Constitution. Again, if you go back to cut, cap, and balance, here you had the House of Representatives that did exactly what we sent them there to do. As soon as we elected them and they hit the ground, they threw together cut, cap, and balance, and they shoved it directly over to the Senate, and it was Harry Reid that stopped it. The guys in the House, there was nothing they could do. You cannot jump over the president might say, I'll just work around Congress. Congress can't work around itself.
Well, then what suggestion would you have for the congressmen and the senators? What are they going to do? Because he's going to do it again and again and again.
Well,
and again.
I just gave you the answer. You have to increase the majority in the House, and you have to get 60 senators. You're shaking your head at me. I'm just telling you. That's the constitutional answer. Okay. You get 60 senators and a plurality of a majority in the House, his agenda is done. It's over. Because, unless he decides to do everything by executive order, and then at that point, if you find out he's doing executive order for the express written consent of overcoming Congress, then I believe you're an impeachable offense.
Okay, that's what I was after. That's what I was after.
Yep.
Okay. Someone else.
Yeah, and again, impeachment doesn't matter if you don't own the Senate. We learned that in the 90s.
Pat, I have heard you interview Richard Murdoch.
Yes.
In case there are some here who don't know who he is, would you explain him?
Richard Murdoch is, I believe, first of all, a God-fearing person. I also believe him to be a constitutionalist. He's a terrific historian. He is also currently our Indiana State Senator, and he is running for the Senate seat currently held by Richard Lugar. I'm sorry, what did I say? Oh, yeah, don't listen to me. I stopped getting paid at 6 o'clock, so I don't really care what's... But he's running for the seat held by Lugar. And look, do I think that Dick Lugar is evil and dark? No, I don't think all that. I think his time has come and gone. I think he's a very nice man who didn't know how to let go, and it's time that we gently tell him it's time to let go. You know, it's time to go. You know, there came the day when I had to look at my grandmother and say, it's time for you to go to the home. But yeah, I'll tell you this. Even before we got to this election, and this goes back several years, all the times I had the Saturday show, when I filled in for other people, over the course, the ones that I've gone back and I can actually count, 28 times Dick Lugar has been invited to come onto the air with me. I've never even gotten a response. If you repeat this, I'll deny it and then I'll kill you. I'm the #2 rated talk show in the state of Indiana. And he wouldn't come on. He wouldn't even come on. I don't know what that says to you. It says a whole lot to me. You know, I really don't want to stand up and be answerable to the people. Well, that sounds more of like what we declared ourselves to get away from when we wrote that document to England. You know, when you start thinking that you're too high and mighty to have to deal with me, then I'm more than glad to create the arrangement where you don't have to deal with me anymore. You know, I'll get somebody else to deal with me. I think Richard Murdoch will deal with me. And I'll tell you this. In all the conversations I've had with Richard Murdoch, and I've had several, on air and off air, I don't think that I will ever have to apologize for voting for him. At all. Yes, ma'am.
Pat, the thing that bothers me is that in the debates, the candidates are, hitting at each other and all this, and we're talking about the vetting. But what I'd like a candidate to do is say, this is what I would do, the solution to a problem, and you say, this is the very bill that was sent by the House to the Senate, and they're sitting on it. They're not going to get any better platform than what they have now. Who knows how well the press will cover these Republicans after we've made our choice.
Yeah, that is a pipe dream. First of all, the debates are a sham. Okay, the debates are staged more for the benefit of whoever it is that's putting the debate on. If it's the CNN debate, it's for the benefit of CNN. If it's a Fox News debate, it's for the benefit of Fox News. There's very little that's going on in those debates that's actually for the benefit of the country or actually trying to get down to a true, genuine answer of whatever the problems are. And back when we had 8 and 9 people up there, that's ridiculous. I mean, you remember the day back when we were trying to, when Souder had to resign and everybody tried to jump into the caucus. I'm out at IPFW and I'm moderating a debate. There were 14 people on the platform. I felt like that guy at the Shrine Circus that keeps running around trying to keep all the plates spinning. I mean, that's what it felt like. Nobody knew anything. There were so many people it didn't matter. Finally, now that we're getting down to about 4, actually 3.5. But when you get down to 4, actually now we have more elongated conversations. And I have people that call and say, oh, I don't like it, they're going at each other. I want them to go at each other. I really do. Because if Newt can't stand up to Mitt, and if Mitt can't stand up to Santorum, and if Ron Paul, if Newt can't stand up to Mitt, if they can't learn to do battle with other guys that are of the same party, Obama will eat them alive. Now, I will tell you this, and this is I'm not telling you to vote like I would vote. I'm not telling you to think like I would think. I have a real hard problem in my head thinking that Newt Gingrich is going to end up being my candidate. But I will tell you, I'd give about 2 months' pay to watch him on the debate stage with Obama. It'd be like a piece of meat going into a grinder, wouldn't it? Because Newt is kind of like that Mennonite preacher. He's not always right, but he's never in doubt. Anybody else?
What do we do about the apathy in America? I mean, it's up to the voters.
Well, you're doing part of it here. I mean, just by virtue of the fact of saying I'm giving some time and I'm going to be here. Reminds me of the time I asked the older lady in our church what she thought about all the apathy and ignorance in the church, and she said, "I don't know and I don't care." But the thing about apathy is very infectious. Whether it's a church, whether it's an elder board, whether it's a school board, whether it's a marching band. I mean, you get a bunch of people that don't give a rip. When his band director became his director, he had been a marvelous band director at Wayne High School. And then because of all the great, marvelous, wonderful things that we did at Fort Wayne Public Schools, he ended up looking at the situation at Wayne saying, "Hey, it's been great, but I'll see you." And so he came to Adams Central, where they had an okay band, but they hadn't been competitive for a long time. And in real short order, they were winning districts, they were winning regionals. They've been to state. Are you kidding me? They've been to state. Adams Central. Okay, you can fit Adams Central in the trunk of my car. But the stuff, and do you know why? Because he thinks that his director believes in him. And he doesn't allow apathy in his band. So they don't have any. When they take a field on a Saturday, on a typical Saturday, you have a competition, okay? What time are you normally at the school that morning? About 7? Okay, so they're there about 7. By the way, the neighbors love that, by the way. Especially if you have a band like ours at Snyder High School, where you have a drum line of about 16. Oh, they love that at 7 in the morning. Because the houses in the neighborhood are right up next to Snyder High School. They love that, yeah. In fact, when I was in charge of the parent support group for our school, we made sure that on parade days, and that's where we marched through the streets before we get on the bus to go to competitions, we made sure that we slowed down in front of the houses of the people that didn't like us. Just wanted you to know we're here. But when you guys get together at 7 in the morning, I mean, do you realize how stupid that is? What are you doing at school on a Saturday at 7 in the morning with a bunch of people? Some of them you don't like, some of them you do like. Some of the girls in the color guard are really cute. See, I was in band, okay? Wait till you're drum major, then you get your pick. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. And then you get old and fat and it doesn't matter. But the reason that you do it is everybody, when you guys marched this year, you were how many, about 80? 64, okay. So with the 64, you've got him and 63 others just like him that have bought into something. That's how you deal with apathy. You get somebody who believes that they've really bought into something. Like, do you realize how stupid it is, like 7 in the morning on Saturday? Do you realize how stupid it is that you're sitting here tonight? There's a couple of hundred of you here tonight, okay? Okay, on a weeknight, it's supposed to start snowing in a little while. It's cold out. Some of you, your feet hurt because you won't go to walking on air like I told you. Your back hurts, your bones ache, you had a bad day at work. When you get home, you're going to have trouble because she was yipping at you before you left, and she's going to be yipping at you when you get home. And so you're not happy, and you're not, why are you here? Because you're trying to buy into something.
That's right.
Because you're trying to buy into something. This, just so you know, this right here is why they tried to come up with legislation to stop talk radio. This is why they tried to do away with the fairness doctrine. Let me let you in on a little secret. And this dawned on me one day. When they first tried to give me the daily program back 5 or 6 years ago, because I owned my other office, we just couldn't quite come together on the numbers, I mean, I knew I'm going to make a whole lot less in the part of my day when I'm on radio than when I'm in my office. But, I need to be willing to make some payments for freedom as well, but it still had to work somehow. And so we're at the dinner table, and we're sitting there, and the lovely Mrs. Miller and Shannon, terrible twos, perfect, right? And then there's Courtney. So we're sitting at the table, and Shannon says to me, "So did you meet with the guys from the radio station today?" "Yeah, I did." "So are you going to start doing the show every day?" "It's just not going to work, Shannon. It's just not." "Oh, Dad, I really wanted to hear you on every day." "I appreciate that, sweetie. It's just not going to work." And she goes, "How come?" And Kim said, Sweetie, it was kind of a money thing, and let's just leave it at that. I could hear the wheels turning in Courtney's head over here, which is never a good sign. Courtney turned to me and she goes, didn't Rush Limbaugh just sign a 6-year, $250 million deal? Yes. Well, aren't you worth at least 1/250th of a Rush Limbaugh? To which my lovely bride, at that time of 33 years, said, honey, obviously not. But now the reason they push so hard for a fairness doctrine, let me tell you something, it's not because of Rush Limbaugh. It's because of Rush Limbaugh listeners. Rush Limbaugh brings in so much revenue from all those advertisers. If Rush Limbaugh's show was canceled tomorrow, CNN and MSNBC would be standing in line trying to get him on their airwaves because they know he's going to bring 30 million buying listeners with him. That's not their problem. Their problem is not Pat Miller sitting out here on Maples Road on the south side of Fort Wayne. The problem is you. Because they hear you call in and say, well, Pat, I was just thinking that when it comes to this cap and trade thing, and some guy's listening over in Kokomo, and he's like, that's what I'm thinking. And so then he calls in. Do you know I have a guy who listens to our program every day? For him, it's the middle of the night, from New Zealand, over the internet. He's never even been to Indiana. So I wrote him one day, I said, just how horrible is television in New Zealand? Are you kidding me? No, mate, we love you down here. Whatever. But the problem is you get people all over the country going, yeah, me too, yeah, me too, yeah, me too. Then the next thing you know, they've got 900,000 people on the mall in Washington at a Glenn Beck rally, and they're trying to tell us it was 150,000. That's right. Why? Because the people in San Diego think like you think, just like they think in Alabama, and just like they think in Batesville, Arkansas, and Lenexa, Kansas, and Indianapolis, Indiana, and Philadelphia, and yes, even some corners of New York City. That's their problem. Because that's the part they can't control.
We need to do that again.
You start it and I'll go.
I'm going to try it. Fort Wayne's where I'm going to try it.
We'll get everybody to come to Fort Wayne.
912, you know 912, because I see you at 912.
Yep. Yep, I've been there.
Ryman Square, bring your tent.
Listen, I'm a cheap guy. I'm a cheap guy. I'll meet you at Fryman. I'll just take a tent that's already there.
What would happen if people just went there and just started camping out with their family for the weekend?
I have no idea. Thankfully, I don't camp, first of all. But I'd be willing to come and visit you. And then when you get put in jail, I'll come and visit you there too. But the bottom line is the coming together is the part that has to work. It takes care of the apathy. It takes care of the what next. It takes care, because the problem looks so insurmountable. You know, I mean, you can't even get into the White House. Big wrought iron gate, Secret Service. Well, you can get into it. There's a place not far from where you live that's a voting booth, and that's how you get into it. We take our guys and we put them in there, and we really need to do it. But please remember what I said. As much as I want Pennsylvania Avenue, we have to increase the majority in the Congress, and we have to make sure we have not just a Republican, but a conservative majority in the Senate. Okay. Is that my signal that we're done? You? Well, you're the boss, so I'll let you ask it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, relating back to the whole band thing, I have 5 kids that were in band. He's one of them. He had to come and say, who's the guy you listen to all the time, Dad, on the radio? So
This is your son? Is that right? You need to call me.
I will.
As a pastor's kid, there is more you can get away with than you can possibly imagine. Dude, I've got a notebook at home that thick. It has got great ideas.
So all 5 of them were in marching band. All of them was drumming, and got one in color guard, so I can relate.
See? Yep.
But I think the biggest problem, and maybe I just want to get your opinion on this.
Okay.
I don't know where you go to church, where not, but
I go to Brookside Church on the northeast side of Fort Wayne. We're a church of about 1,400. So.
But I think actually America, the biggest problem that we have in America is the church.
Yep.
You know, listen to the lady today who was talking about, said, well, I don't like any of the Republicans, I'm not even vote.
Yep. Sherry.
The biggest
Drove me crazy.
Yeah, but the biggest problem in America is the church, because even the church is divided, because so much of the church last election voted for President Obama.
Yes.
You know, and they're still divided. And until the church comes and is united, we're gonna have a hard time with this. And so it's not about getting America united, it's about getting the church united and standing up, because that lady, I think she may have been a believer, maybe, from a few things that she said.
Maybe.
And she needs to know you are commanded by Scripture to vote. You are to be salt and light. It is a command of God. And if you don't vote, you're in sin.
Yeah.
You better get out there and vote. And that's what I think the church needs to find out. God is commanding us to vote.
You know, when the scriptures tell us, if you go back to the Greek text and even the parts of the Aramaic that were spoken, when you go back, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's and the things unto God that are God's, that's not talking about just money. Okay? That's talking about attitudes. I think the best citizens in America should be New Testament believing citizens. I think we should set examples. And I think you're exactly right on that. Yes, ma'am.
Our church is starting up what we call a culture impact team.
Okay?
And we have a bulletin board, we try to get updated every Sunday with things that we see in the newspaper or other things we see on the internet.
Okay.
To keep people informed. We're going to have copies of the Constitution. We're going to have a display made. Our pastor's going to emphasize voting from the pulpit.
You better be careful. That crazy guy here does that too.
We
Dangerous,
hope
very
to do voter registration in our church, and we're just going to put a big emphasis on this.
Yep.
And it's a large church, well, for this community.
Sure.
But many churches can do that.
Yep.
Because this apathy problem is what has really bothered me.
We were lulled into a slumber as a nation. We'd heard so many times. I mean, back in the days of, my brain just took a cab. Gerald Ford and running against Jimmy Carter. And when Jimmy Carter said, "This is the most important election in our lifetime," I remember people looking at each other going, "Gee, really? I don't really, why?" But we hear it so many times. But I'm here to tell you what, when you look at the freedoms that have eroded over the course of the last 3 years, this is unbelievable. When I was your age, I remember at the time I lived in Indianapolis, and I lived out in the Eagledale section of Indianapolis, which wasn't far from the Indianapolis 500. And Jackie Hudson was my best friend. And now this is Indianapolis, big city Indianapolis. And on Saturday mornings, I'd help Jackie deliver the Saturday morning paper. Now back then, okay, this is 1960s, a lot of houses didn't have air conditioning. Okay, and in the summer in Indianapolis, it can get hot. I still remember going up to houses, and at that time, these were houses that are only 2, 3, and 4 years old in nice subdivisions. And it was so hot, windows were open. I remember we'd go up to deliver the Saturday morning paper about 5:30 in the morning. The main door was open and the screen door was unlocked. We'd open the screen door and lay the newspaper right inside the door and close it. Can you possibly imagine doing that today? I wouldn't leave my Taurus out there and come in to see you without locking it, okay, because we got renegade kids like him. But I mean, in one lifetime, what's happened, what's your first name? Corbin. Cool name. Here's what's happened, Corbin. Your dad's dad and my dad had conversations when they looked straight in the eye like I'm looking at you right now, and we said, you know what? If you decide to apply yourself and you go to school and you really study, and you don't just be in the marching band, but you learn what you learn about getting along with people and working together and taking a show you've never seen before and owning it and advancing and helping the guy next to you and the guy that marches behind you. And if you apply yourself in every aspect of learning and you do that again in college, there's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't be. There's nothing you can't own. And I'm just telling you right now, Corbin, if we don't turn things around this country, your dad and I aren't going to be able to have that conversation with you. And it's the first time it's been like that. We cannot be with true confidence sure that we're going to leave Corbin a country better than what we found. And it's the first time in the history of our country we've done that. I find that very sad. Very sad. I'm worried for a society where American exceptionalism is considered a cocky sin. I happen to believe in American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism doesn't mean we're better than anybody else. It means that through the exceptionalism of our country and our Constitution, we have the abilities here that if the Corbins of this world decide to grow up right and apply themselves, and you're not going to be perfect, I guess you know that, but you apply yourself to as best you can become almost anything that you want to be. And there are very few places on earth you can do that. But we've always been able to do it here. Not for long. We keep it up. Before his generation comes up, doctors won't even be able to doctor in the way they want, where they want. For the first time ever.
I was just going to say, my son's been in India for 6 weeks, and he's, I think, one of the biggest things he's...
I think I talked to him today. I had a problem with my computer, and I called her. So I'm sorry. I'm just real sorry. He doesn't work for Dell, does he? No, okay, all right.
One of the biggest things he's learning is how great it is to be an American.
Yep.
While he's there in India.
Yep. The sad part is, though, he had to go to India to find that out. That's the sad part. Yes, sir.
I'm a junior at Adams Central.
Okay, are you in the band?
No.
I can't talk to you, I'm sorry.
That's perfect. My mother was a school teacher for 19, 20 years, right, Dad?
Okay.
And she just went about livid when they passed the Indiana merit law for teachers. If your students don't do well, you
Yep.
get pay
Yep.
reduction or whatever. And I'm like, how can these guys be making laws when they haven't been to school in 30, 35 years? They don't know what it's like to be a student in the 21st century.
That's not even the whole of the problem. The whole of the problem goes back to something I said earlier. They shouldn't be making those laws because they shouldn't be dealing with Indiana education in Washington, D.C. Should be back here. Look, either the enumerated powers and the 10th Amendment means something or it doesn't. Obviously it doesn't. And if the 10th Amendment doesn't mean anything, then let's just gather together and throw all of our constitutions in a pile and light them on fire. It either means something or it doesn't. And if they keep it up, folks, what's going to happen is we're going to have to enact that part of the Constitution where we take our government back.
That's right. And what was I going to say? About, I just lost my train of thought.
While you find your train of thought, let me say one more thing. A lot of that problem didn't come from this administration either. It came from the last one. You know, an R behind the name doesn't fix everything. George W. Bush was a great guy. He wasn't a great conservative. No Child Left Behind is one of the stupidest things that ever came down the pike. Yep. Yeah, listen, I have to sell Medicaid D. What a nightmare that is. You know, let's make people buy something that we don't understand. They can't afford it. We can't afford it. Half the time it won't work. Now, if they can, see, you have to understand, my dad came over from Dublin, and my father ended up, by the time he retired, his #1 philosophy of life was this. If you want to write this down, you can. This is the greatest philosophy of life of Patrick Hagerty, and here it is. If the federal government tries really, 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 really hard, they can screw up a one-car parade. So now, these people that could not do prescription drugs in a way that works, now they're going to run all of health care. Okay, you tell me how's that going to work. You tell me how Obamacare is going to work when they first enacted it, even though it doesn't fully go into force until 2014, and they took $6 billion and put it into a fund, and that fund was just to help pay for the costs of people that were under Medicaid only, just to get them to the start of Obamacare, and when they were 9 months in, that was already broke. And they think that they're going to fix it by handling everything? You've got to be kidding me. I don't want to tell the president, well, maybe I do want to tell him how to do his job, but like, for example, on immigration, he made the statement about 3 months ago that we have somewhere, now get this, we have somewhere between 12 and 17 million illegals here. Somewhere between 12 and 17 million. It's just a difference of 5 million. It's not a big number or anything. But this is how many people we have running around that are illegal. But we can't find them all. We're down in Florida, okay? We're down at the other house down south of Fort Myers, and we decided to go up to Mickey Mouse World for a few days. I don't know why. I was just dying to take a shower using a soap shaped like a mouse head, I guess. And then we were driving back down to our place down there south of Fort Myers, and as we're driving back down, my cell phone rings. Mine. I look down, and it's a 260 number. I'm thinking, uh-oh, I have a client with a problem. Could be a problem. Could be somebody at my office. Hello? Hi. Is this Shannon Miller's dad? Yes. Now, if they'd said Courtney, I would have said no. They said, well, Mr. Miller, this is Blockbuster in Maple Crest, and she has a video that's 5 days overdue. Okay, we can't find 5 million illegals that we think are here. In fact, as you and I sit here right now, there are 213,000 expired student visas of people that are still here, and we don't know where they are. Give them to Blockbuster. They'll find them. Yeah, did you think of it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Just nowadays, kids in high school, they don't care for classes. I mean, you know, I know kids like in my pre-calculus class, they don't care. One, because they're never going to use that stuff in real life. It's not relevant to them. And two, they just don't care. They'd rather go home and play Call of Duty or on their little iPod
Okay,
thing.
you want to know why? How many people in the room are teachers or have been teachers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know why? Because teachers are given no incentive to give a rip. A, seniority means everything. B, be a member of the union or we'll rip your eyes out. And C, teach to the test. I don't care how you learned it, just so you come up with the right answer, and you better come up with the right answer because we have to show that you progressed. And if you don't progress, we're going to put you forward anyway. I had a teacher in my church tell me, I had a kid last year who was a great kid, but he had no business leaving the 3rd grade. This kid couldn't do it. He tried, just could not. But he was on the edge. He needed one more year in the 3rd grade, and he needed it. I wanted to keep him back. His parents wanted me to keep him back. But the administration wouldn't let us keep him back because we had to show that the numbers just kept going forward. You know why? We're doing school, we're not educating children. We need to get back to where people like your mom are encouraged and that we award them for educating. There's a documentary that came out. Nope. Kids are not cars. And the whole idea was that you guys are not coming out of an assembly line. And I talked to the guy that put the documentary together. This has probably been about 6 or 7 months ago we did this. And he said, you're in Indiana, right? I said, yeah. He goes, okay, case in point. He said, last week at one of the school districts in Indiana, you had 2 teachers that received statewide awards for being Teacher of the Year. When budgets were curtailed, they were cut because they were 2 of the newest teachers on the staff. Now, does that sound smart to you? If I run my business like that, I'm dead. People that work in my office that work very, very well, and even when they make mistakes, they're trying, and they see the overall picture, and they're trying to get the business to the next level, I will work alongside of them, and we will do anything and everything that we can to get there. But when they start thinking everything is owed to them because they've put in their time, well then guess what? I'll punch their clock because they've put in their time. The part of the problem is that we have with education is with everything being in Washington, D.C., they set the mandates. They've never seen your kid. They've never seen your grandchild. They have no idea who their math teacher is. They don't know what's going on in your history class. They have no concept whatsoever, and yet they think somehow they know better than the people here. Let me run and sit on my own school board in my own community, and let me hold my principals and my teachers accountable, and we will start educating children, and we will do it so well that people from neighboring districts will want their kids in my district. It's just like everything else. They may hate Walmart, but they shop there, right? Because it works. All these people that stand up and go, oh, I hate Walmart. It just, they're so, yeah, if you could own Walmart, you'd own it. Right? You get schools that can start having teachers that are good teachers, and they're rewarded because they're good people and they're good teachers and they genuinely love their kids. I'll show you school districts that could become the envy, and other school districts around them will start mimicking what they're doing as opposed to just following the checklists and the boxes that come to them from Washington, D.C., because if you don't, you're going to lose some of your funding. It was my money in the first place. Now you got some yahoo who almost drove the Chicago schools into the ground, and now because he's the buddy of the President of the United States, now he's in charge of all education throughout the country. Where is that a good idea? I'm glad these guys didn't decide to do the same thing with how they build cars. I might not make it home tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't take any of that money. Didn't you like that too when the guy did the commercial? Why did you buy Ford? You know those commercials where they bring the people in and they don't know they're going to be interviewed? And they say, why did you buy a Ford? And the guy said, because I wanted to pick the company that didn't take a buyout from the government. I wanted to take a company that stood on their own. Next thing you know, somebody got a call from the White House. That commercial went away. If Ford would have stood their ground and said, nope, we're keeping the commercial, Mrs. Miller would be in a Ford right now. Yes, yes, ma'am.
The polls right now, and we know they're all correct, right? They have everybody, they have Obama ahead of anybody that is running.
Yeah, and that's not really a big deal because the Republicans right now are beating each other up, and there's nobody beating up Obama.
Right.
When you end up with a Republican and he stands up in debate against the Democrat, those numbers are going to level out really, really fast. I mean, really fast.
So you think any one of the, I'll say the three, can get their act together and...
Do I need you to say what we're saying again like we did a while ago with Murdoch so that we all know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess we got to keep our fingers crossed and pray.
I'll say this. I would take any of the four. And then pray to God nobody attacks us. Wait a minute, I got to go to the sound guy, because if you don't take care of the sound guys, they can shut you off in a heartbeat. Yes, sir.
Why do the Democrats like Romney so much? I haven't figured that out.
Why do they like him so much? Do you know what I... How many of you listen to the show? How many of you are going to listen tomorrow no matter what? Okay. Do you know what near beer is? Look, if he ends up being the candidate, I'll vote for him. But if Romney is a conservative, I'm a Filipino fighter pilot. I mean, just, you know, I mean, that's all I can tell you. I'll be honest with you. I think Santorum scares them to death. Santorum has the pit bullishness of Gingrich, but he doesn't have the baggage. Yeah. And they thought he was going to fall by the wayside, but he didn't. And now Romney's not the only one that's scared. Yes, sir.
I think that because Rick Santorum, he got beat in re-election for the Senate, and he was able to sit at home and actually have a life and sit back and see how society is
Yep.
actually going. It gives him perspective over Romney, over Gingrich, over Obama, over Ron Paul, who sit in their offices every day, collect government checks, and he actually gets to become a normal person and knows what the normal American goes through, and that's who we need in the White House is an American, true American who
Yep.
American.
Yep. Look, I want a guy. I want a guy who is a genuine conservative, not because I'm asking him questions. I want a guy who his love for God is genuine. I want a guy who loves his wife, and when he said till death do us part, he meant it the first time. I want a guy who does not the fact that he has this special needs 3-year-old child tell you his commitment to life? When everybody said this baby's not going to live but just a few weeks after birth, you'd be better off to go ahead and let the child go. No, we're not going to do it that way. God is in charge of life. We're not in charge of life, and Doc, by the way, you're not in charge of life. And so, no, we're going to trust God for what. I hope that little girl lives a long, long time. I love nothing better than to have a bunch of liberal, God-hating doctors look like a bunch of blithering idiots. Yes, ma'am.
What about Santorum having trouble getting his name on the ballot here in Indiana? What's that all about?
That's the fault of people like you and me.
What do you mean?
Because we didn't do the job to get him on the ballot. Is he from Indiana? No. Was he able to come to this state and rally people to put his name on the ballot? No. He didn't have the time and the money to put together all the big machinery that some of the other guys did. So that you and I are now realizing he's probably a pretty good conservative, but we're realizing it a little late. So it's the fault of people like you and me.
Was he the one tonight who 2/3 of the names were not approved, or did they were just
No, he just fell short. And I think he fell short by 27 names, I think. Yeah. Yep. Yes, sir.
Pat, I just want to thank you for what you're doing here and for calling it out, because we have to take that step out, and I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Thank you.
Just like in that last comment, because folks, we've got to be prepared to give all we've got, because if we don't, we're going to take it anyway.
Well, one said a long time ago, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Okay? Well, I need to make that decision or not. One great patriot took that and modified it slightly, but it was the same sentiment when he said, give me liberty or give me death. It's that ability to step up. Pastor, if your church and my church, if we had people with that level of commitment, if we were as committed to our God as those in jihad are committed to theirs, we couldn't build church buildings fast enough. We couldn't keep up. You sound guys would be busy all the time because we'd be adding speakers and roofs and all kinds of stuff. When it gets right down to it, in the course of Christianity and in the course of conservative Americanism, we're actually pretty anemic. And we're coming to the party kind of late. But we better come to the party. We better come to the party. I've been here 2 hours. I'll give you another 10 minutes, but if you guys want to go, we can go. Yes?
I was wondering if you brought your crystal ball along. I've been watching the returns on some of the caucuses and the primaries and stuff, and I can't keep up with all of them, it seems, but if I'm right, the delegate count's really fractured right now.
Yeah, it's you've got Romney, who right now is sitting around 127. You've got Santorum somewhere around 73. And Romney's already counting Maine, and I think he might be a little premature there, because all of the caucuses weren't quite in yet when he made that, and we all remember what happened in Iowa. Can I ask you a question? How is it if Romney wins Iowa by 7, that's a terrific victory, and then Santorum wins by 34, and somehow it's a dead even heat? I haven't quite figured that out yet.
Well, I heard someone say that even if Romney was just to take a big group and sweep them all out, that he would still come up short.
I had, on the program today, if you were listening today in the 4 o'clock hour, I had Mark Souder on today. Now look, I'm not condoning anything that Mark Souder did. Somebody wrote me today, why did you have Souder on? Because when it comes to political head counting, he's the most brilliant guy I know. And he said, I've run the numbers, and with all the numbers that are left, the Republican has to have 1,144 delegates to win the nomination on the first ballot, 1,144. If everything that's left falls Romney's way, the way it looks like it would fall, he'll end up with 1,100. The other 3 would end up with 1,180, which means you would go to a brokered convention. And that number is assuming that Romney wins Michigan, which now I don't know that he's going to do that. Look, if Romney loses Michigan, that is enormous. And more than just because of the delegate count for Michigan. That's where his father was governor. That's where Mitt Romney grew up. Okay? Well, yeah, but he won Maine. Okay, it's next door to where he was governor. If he didn't win, again, Maine, okay, your senator is Olympia Snow. Big, hairy deal. You know, you can't tell the difference between Olympia Snow and a liberal Democrat. I mean, you can't. Very entertaining. And you know what? I'm not troubled by that. What are we going to do? What happens if we go? Do you remember? This is exactly where the Democrats were 4 years ago. They fought it clear to the end, didn't they? In fact, do you remember after it looked like the delegate counts were going to come out in Brock's favor? Will Hillary come out and say she's going to support him or not? And then you remember she had that great big gathering in Washington, D.C., and it was almost like she was a queen giving her blessing. Right? You remember that? Okay? If we fight this out to the end, I don't care. If it ends up being Mitt at the end, if it ends up being Santorum at the end, by the time we get there, they are going to be terrific fighters. Terrific fighters. But going back to the conversation we had a minute ago to the lady in the room, who I didn't mean to offend when I said what I said. But whoever it is, we'd better decide to fight. If Santorum is your number one guy and he comes in second and it's Mitt, you better be ready to fight. Because Mitt Romney is better than where we are. And if all along you thought it was going to be Mitt and Santorum's rising, you're like, what's going to happen if Santorum wins? Support him. Support him. Okay? Again, if it's Ron Paul, take 2 aspirin, get up in the morning, and support him. Yes, sir.
And then buy a few guns for yourself, right?
What's that?
And then buy a few guns for
That's exactly correct. Yep. Load them up, baby. So,
We got to let this man go home. We got a little bit of business to take care of here before we let you get out of here. We're going to get $1 or $2 out of it for a donation. If I can get some guys to pass this.
just for my part, thank you very much for letting me do this tonight. I appreciate it.